Hello and welcome to the NextPowerUp review summary of Blood Alloy Reborn. This is a side-scrolling score-achieving shooter by Suppressive Fire Games, and it's got this major art style similarity to games like Metroid and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the old Game Boy Color handheld, whatever you had at the time, a Pocket or an Advanced. But the one thing that confused me a little bit about this game is that even though it looks very similar to Metroid Prime, Metroid Fusion, the whole works, and some of the mechanics are quite similar in essence, the actual gameplay is not really what you'd expect. The thing I found a little bit weird was that when you jump into the tutorial, which is a really good tutorial, it explains everything and sort of sets your boundaries and goals exactly where they should be. The tutorial is like this nice, slowly evolving level that progresses. Except the rest of the game is nothing like that. The rest of the game is literally 3 levels, which you basically just survive and score as many points as possible. So going from the tutorial to the actual main game is a little bit weird, because at first you think, hey, I'm getting a Metroid Prime experience. But what you're actually getting is, I don't know, it's kind of like an arena survival game, I guess. And that can be a little bit weird. But if you've read the Steam write-up, you should be aware of what kind of game this is in the first place. So it's just a little bit confusing when you do that tutorial. Anyway, this game is a little bit hit and miss in a lot of different areas. I'm not entirely certain whether I am 100% saying, yes, this is great, or whether I'm saying, I'm not so sure about this. Because there's a lot of, I'd say they're about equal in terms of the pro and con, so this is largely going to be down to personal preference on whether you like the core gameplay style. So, at its basis, this is a game where you play a character, you're scoring loads of points. The whole point is just to beat your own scores and complete these random side objectives, which don't give you anything other than experience and unlock more soundtracks, more weapons and armor. But you know, once you've unlocked all the levels, which you unlock by level 14, once you've unlocked the 3 weapons, the 3 skills and the 6 pieces of armor, beyond that there is nothing, and that can be done quite quickly. I think I've probably completed all of the unlockable stuff about 2 hours in. So from 2 hours beyond, you're literally just going to be playing for points, for your own sense of self-achievement. So if you're one of the kind of people that likes playing those sorts of games, definite sort of score striving players, then yes, this game is going to be straight on your radar and you'll be interested. If you're the kind of person that would prefer a Metroid Prime sort of linearized Castlevania-like, I guess, then you know, this is probably not the kind of game you want to be looking at. But anyway, we'll just jump straight into it. And one of the best things about this game is the movement system. It's absolutely fantastic. It's insanely fast. Like, just the normal running is reasonably slow, but a lot of the time you'll be pressing shift to do like this boost, whatever it's called. They've got some silly name for it. But you're basically grinding along the floor. You can grind along walls and you can grind along ceilings. And it's fantastic. It means you can traverse an entire map in whatever way you see fit, by jumping using your melee skills, or by grinding along these walls and then using skills at the same time. And it's just absolute madness. You've even got a dodge function. Movement is absolutely spectacular. It's awesome. It's one of the main reasons why I enjoyed myself in this game. And not just the movement is satisfying, but the whole thing is satisfying. When it comes to destroying enemies, there are tons of different enemies. You'll be in these areas where you'll dodge, you'll slow down time, and then you'll pull off some crazy combo while grinding along a ceiling. And it just feels really good. This title has just an excellent movement system, but also very satisfying core gameplay. And I feel like I'm on this new crusade when it comes to just core solid gameplay features in games, because for the last few weeks I've been reviewing stuff where, yes, they're simple, but you know, the basis that they are built on is absolutely fantastic. And this is one of those games where just the functional parts of the game feel really damn good to play. It's a very challenging title. The first time I played on the first level, I probably only scored a few thousand points. And obviously you'll progressively learn how to deal with certain enemy types, what sort of skills you'll find more useful to your playstyle, what sort of armor you'll find more useful. And it does get quite challenging, and the more you progress, the more difficult it becomes, the more enemies spawn, and then you've got the bosses, which are just this excellent thing I'll go into in a second. The soundtrack is quite cool because you unlock soundtrack tracks by leveling up. It's alongside the weapons, armor and skills, you also unlock soundtracks. So as you progress through the game and score more points and get more XP, you will unlock more soundtracks. So it kind of feels like there's at least a little bit of something that's still fresh when it comes to playing the game. And the soundtrack is fantastic. It's like one of the awesome, best soundtracks I've ever heard. I just generally like chiptune style soundtracks in general, and I bought a couple of albums earlier this week. Art style is pretty good. As I said, it's very similar to Metroid Prime. If you're into that like I am, awesome, perfect representation of the game, and I think it's really ideal for the type of game it is. So spot on there. Now the bosses, they spawn every 10,000 points that you earn in the game, and they are just, suddenly smack bang in the middle of the game. They're really difficult to dive into, and, they're challenging, and it's just a nice little touch. On top of this core basic gameplay that just genuinely feels good, you've got these, like, little optional objectives and these bosses that you've got to do in the meantime to earn even more XP. And the bosses just sort of, they add a nice little fresh element to a title that would otherwise get quite monotonous and repetitive, I guess. And I think without the optional objectives where you can complete, like, do not touch the floor for a minute, or don't attack for a minute, or whatever, and some of them are just kill this boss, it starts to feel really, really good. And those things just mix up the gameplay a bit, again, as I said, to stop it feeling too stagnant. Now, onto the negatives, which is kind of similar to the size of the positives in this game. The upgrade system when it comes to unlocking stuff, yeah, it's a kind of nice way of evolving the gameplay, except there's only 3 guns, 2 of which are basically the same. They're just different colours. One of them ruins the hyper laser charge thing, which is like a Mega Man style hypercharge beam thing that destroys everything. And the third upgrade basically negates that entirely. The 3 available levels, there's only 3 levels in the entire game. You'll just be playing the same 3 levels forever unless they release some more content, which they may do. And the first level is very good, very well balanced, perfectly made, wonderful, excellent art set. Second level has a lot of bugs in it. Frequently, I think if you watch this video, it's the foresty one, and you'll see me accidentally clip through the ceiling and then run along an invisible path and then fall down forever and have to quit and just lose all my progress. So the second one has got quite a few bugs in it. The third one is similar to the second one in that it's spread so far apart and there are so many dividers that you often find it quite difficult to get your multiplier up, and you need to get your multiplier up to 10 in order to heal yourself. So the second and third map feel distinctly more difficult, but also that slight little bit more boring because you don't get sort of swarmed by enemies like you do in the first one. So the other 2 maps don't feel as good as the first. They don't feel as well designed as the first. And the third map also has this really annoying problem with the palette. The color palette is wrong. I mean, the colors are good, but the way that they've designed the level, basically what's in the background and what's in the foreground are important things to know, and you kind of need to know at the pace that you're playing this game, what you are just going to pass in front of because it's in the background, and what you're going to hit and be able to grind up or dodge out the way of if it's in the foreground. And the problem with the third level is a lot of the palette choices of stuff that's in the background and the foreground mix up, and so it doesn't make any sense. So when you're diving across the screen, you'll randomly crash into an object that you thought was in the background and you would have no problem with. So I guess if you're playing it for the first time, for the first hour or so, you're probably going to think, wow, this level is really jarring and quite annoying, and you might eventually get used to it. But it just feels like if they had been a bit more sensible with the color palette, it would have made more visual sense. Aside from the bug with the forest level where you get stuck in the ceiling, there's been an awful lot of bugs this last week. They are fixing them all very slowly but surely. There's been a patch every single day which fixes bugs. Some of them have created others. And the first 2 days the XP system didn't work, but then it was fixed. But then that fix then broke something else and the game was crashing. And then when they fixed the game crashing, one of the sets of armor then stops your energy from regenerating, which meant you couldn't double jump, you couldn't slide, you couldn't use special abilities, you basically couldn't traverse half the levels basically at that point. And there's just lots of weird little bugs all over the place, and yes, they're getting fixed, but it's a week and a bit after release, and it got a little bit annoying, and it was the prime source of frustration of, I would really love to play this game, but I can't. In its current state. And it has improved over the past few days. There are still a couple of bugs, I think. Maybe by the time the review goes up, most of the bugs will be finished and maybe they'll have created new ones, but it's just annoying to have to send an email every single day and say, can't finish the game because this is broken, lost all my progress because this is broken, and it's just a little bit frustrating. And I appreciate that there's not many of the developers. There's only 2 guys doing this game, but you shouldn't release a game in this state. You should have better quality assurance. So I appreciate it's difficult, but at the same time, don't release it if it's not finished. I know a lot of big companies get away with really, really fucking broken games, but it's no excuse really to release something that broken, especially when the core XP element doesn't work for the first 3 days of release, which is a little bit, could very easily cause a lot of backlash for your first potential buyers, which is annoying. VSync is forced and there's a 60 FPS cap, which ties into the fact that there are basically no video options whatsoever. There is 4K support, but it's just scaled. And yeah, it's just annoying when VSync is forced and I don't have an option for that. I've noticed a lot of Unity 5 games that I've been reviewing the last few days. In fact, I think the last 3 games have all been Unity 5 Personal Edition games, and they've all had this VSync force thing, which needs to stop. I think this is PC. We don't like that. The other thing is the sound options in the menu don't control the main menu. So you'll put your headphones on, be deafened, and then you'll go into the sound options menu, turn everything down, and you're still being deafened. But then when you start the game, the sound is then reduced. So screw the sound options menu until they fix it. Go into Windows Volume Mixer and lower it down, because otherwise you're not going to have eardrums, basically, which is a little bit annoying. It's these are the sorts of basic things you expect from a game that just works. As I mentioned, the game has these optional objectives and the bosses and whatnot. Now, some of the optional objectives, some of the bosses, crazy, awesome stuff, but some of them are really quite just, can't be arsed. Like, one of them is interesting, but at the same time, I'm not sure it belongs in the game. It's do not fire your weapon for the first minute. Now, I don't know whether that means do not use your range weapon at all for as long as possible and just melee everything, or whether it means do not attack anything. Because for a game that is entirely based on scoring points and killing things, not firing your weapons for as long as possible seems counterintuitive. Now, you might gain XP for doing that objective, but you're going to gain way more XP and level up faster if you just kill things instead. So there's a lot of these side objectives which kind of don't really make sense, or they're just not that great in compared to other more interesting ones, like don't land for an hour or something. So, you know, the core foundation of the game is really, really cool. It's built on a slightly broken game, granted, but it is really good, very satisfying, awesome, awesome title. You know, it just needs a lot of tweaks. Tweaks probably should have been done before release, but nonetheless, if they do get done in the next week, excuse me, then I will wholeheartedly say, hey, if you're a point scoring, achieving kind of guy, go ahead, play this game. It's awesome, very satisfying. But until they fix everything and just tweak things and make things work and make basic things included in the game, probably maybe wait a bit before you buy it. But other than that, I have actually really enjoyed myself. It's been nice to play something like this, just something different. And it's nice to see a lot of these games using Unity 5. Anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed this review. Sorry about my monotonous voice because I have a cold at the moment, which is not fantastic. But join us on Saturday for our Next Week in Gaming episode, and next week for our review of Hitman. So we look forward to seeing that. Yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this. See you guys next week.